Hi, this is Caroline Cain, and I'm happy to welcome Alia Almoayed with us today, who is a nutritional therapist living in Bahrain, and she's also an author and a speaker. So hi, Alia.
Hi, Caroline.
And today I'd like to ask you some questions and ask you to share with us about your book, I Want Healthy Kids. Because I have a lot of mothers asking me all sorts of questions, and you're the specialist.
Okay, great.
So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do and why you wrote the book?
Well, I qualified first as a nutritional therapist about 10 years ago, and I started practicing here from Bahrain in the Middle East, and I realized that the people that walked into my office the most were mothers who were stuck feeding their children. And as you know, when you have a child, you start worrying not just about yourself, you start worrying about this other human being that you're responsible for. And then I thought, okay, how simple, you just apply the theory. This is the theory that I learned, and this is the child, and you apply it to the child. And then once I had my own kids, I discovered that that's a lot easier said than done, because you have the theory, and then you have the child, and you have something in between that makes everything crazy. We have fussy eaters. They have a mind of their own, of course, and you can't always apply the healthy eating theories to the children, so you end up being stuck, and the mother is usually stressed out anyway. And I discovered that I was giving them tips as I was learning them myself with my two young children at the time. And I started writing those tips out for them as handouts. And then I realized I was repeating myself over and over again, and I thought, why not just put it in a booklet? And then the booklet became a book. And then we published this book, which is called I Want Healthy Kids. And thankfully, a lot of parents are benefiting from it at the moment. We even have a translated version. It went into Arabic, so it's selling in the Arab world as well. So it's very exciting. I think mothers need all the help they can get at the moment. Children are becoming more and more fussy, and there's peer pressure at schools as well. There's pressure maybe in the home as well. Maybe the father doesn't always eat healthy, or maybe the grandparents want to spoil the children. So, we as mothers try to do it as best we can. And then, of course, you're going to make a few mistakes in the meantime, but you try your best.
And that's the thing also, there's so much information out there that even for ourselves, we're not sure, should I be eating this? I've heard this is a good food, this is a bad food. And then when it comes to your children, of course, you're even more aware of it. And it can get quite, you can get quite flustered thinking about all the different options that are out there and then what to end up doing. And also then if you think, oh, I've been feeding my child, for example, soya milk is a good example. They say to me, oh, it's good, I'm not giving my child dairy, I'm giving them soya milk. And then when I say, well, actually, it's not the best thing to be giving them, they think, oh, no, but I've been doing this for 5 years, or there's a lot of these feelings as well.
I think what I tell a lot of mothers is that the information will come to you as and when you need it. If you need that kind of information right now, this is the information that you'll run across. So if you are watching this right now, then this is the information you need to be getting. So there's no use worrying about stuff that you did in the past, because at the time you did what you thought was best.
Exactly.
And, but you're right, there's so many mixed messages out there. Your parents tell you one thing, your newspaper tells you something else, internet. It's very easy to get mixed advice today, and it's very easy to get confused. But at the end of the day, what feels right? What feels right to you? I mean, what do you feel is the information that applies to you and your child? Of course, there is no ideal off-the-shelf menu that will, or even eating plan that will be perfect for everyone, So sometimes a mother would come to me and say, what should I feed my child? And I say, I don't live with your child. What do you think you should be feeding them? I can give you as much guidance as I can, but you know your child the best, and you would probably be the best person to figure out what foods are affecting him when, and how it's affecting his health. So we work within the guidelines, and then say, also be flexible to allow for his individuality and yours,
Exactly, and that's actually leads on to a question which I don't know if you are able to answer or not, which is there such a thing as a fussy eater, or is it very much, is it nurture or is it nature? If you eat a varied diet when you're pregnant, and all these things, and from when the baby starts to eat, or even when you're breastfeeding, that you eat a variety of foods? Or is it down also to personality?
Well, it's down to a lot of things from what I've discovered, I think from experience more than the theory. First of all, eating habits are learned. They're not inherited, they're not born with them genetically. Maybe they have a lot of genetic reasons for doing all kinds of other things, but eating habits are mostly environmental and they are mostly learned. So the good news is that if they are learned, then you can unlearn them. So if somebody puts sugar in their tea, for example, and they stop putting sugar in their tea for, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they will just, adopt the habit of having black tea, for example. The same with a child. The mother would come to me and say, oh, he's like me, he loves chocolate. I think he inherited your eating style rather than the genes that would make him like chocolate. So once I tell that to parents, they think, oh, okay, so I can undo it. But then there's also the guilt factor, but he's so fussy. However, research has shown that children who have specific deficiencies do get fussier. For example, a zinc deficiency in a child would affect his body. They would also affect his taste buds. So a child with a zinc deficiency would not taste food like a normal person would, or a person without that deficiency. So food would taste bland. So things that you think are really exciting and taste delicious might taste very plain and bland for him. And we've discovered that once we've sorted out the deficiencies, the eating does improve because the taste buds improve. So it's simple things like that. So even, for example, if you have a lot of dairy products, dairy products produce mucus in the body, or the body produces mucus as a reaction to dairy products. So you have the mucus in the sinuses, and it blocks the sinuses and the head and everything. But it also coats the tongue area. So just like it creates like a mucus film in the digestive tract. It also does that around the tongue and the throat area. And that affects taste buds as well. If you have mucus coating everything, you don't get much taste out of your food, and you don't get absorption. So you have a double whammy there. You don't absorb the nutrients that you should be absorbing from the food. So you end up with a deficiency, but you also don't taste food as well as you should. So to answer it, yes and no. Most of it is environmental. It's learned habits that made them maybe fussy eaters. They've gotten too used to eating certain kinds of food. But some of it might be deficiency, and sometimes a simple deficiency, just fixing it, can make a big difference.
Gosh, that's absolutely fascinating. It's something I think that a lot of people don't even think about. We think that a deficiency leads to illnesses or other symptoms or whatever, but not that it actually affects our taste buds.
Yes,
it's really. And actually, that's one question that a mother wrote into me when I said I was going to be interviewing you, is when her child was young, and if he was fussy and wouldn't eat the vegetables or whatever they were giving him, they would end up giving him fruit, for example, or something sweet that he wanted. And so they got into this habit, to make life easier, because as you said, sometimes it's a bit stressful. So how do you have any specific tips for unlearning that? Like you said, everything that is learned can be unlearned.
Yeah.
And of course, the older they get, the more determined they get.
Yes. No, that's a very good question. I am not a fan of what I call the food court mentality of this is what we're offering, but if you don't like it, you can go to the next option, and then you can go to the next option. But that's my personal preference. I feel that meal times should be structured. It should be what's offered is what's offered. You either take it or leave it. Because you dig yourself a hole as a parent once you start doing that. And the best way to undo that is just not to do it cold turkey. To say, we have a new rule, you sit the child down, no matter how young they are, as early as 2 even, as long as he can see you talking, that means he understands, and with body language and everything, children pick up a lot of things more than the language. And you say, we're starting a new thing now, what's offered on the table is what's available. If you're not hungry, then I respect that, then you can get up. But it's not if you don't want, I don't know what you're having, grilled vegetables or whatever you're having for lunch. If you don't want that, then there's a fruit option, which is much easier. Because children are very smart, they know that there's an option. And once they know there's another option, then why would they have what you're offering them?
Yeah.
So the answer is, do give the fruits, but don't give them instead of a meal. I mean, if he likes fruits, he can have them as a snack while he's playing in the garden, or a snack in school or whatever, but don't replace the meal with that. And as a transition period, maybe make it, maybe combine the two. Let's say we try to make it fun and put toothpicks, for example, at the meal time, and have a bowl of chopped fruit, whatever it is, let's say watermelon or melon or whatever, and take the toothpicks, take a melon and an olive, for example, or a melon and a piece of vegetable. So it's a good compromise, so that you're not saying, I'm this horrible, evil mother that will make your life miserable. You're saying, okay, here's a compromise for the transition period. You still see the fruit, so don't panic, but let's try something fun. And you have to make it fun, because if it's not fun, then what are the chances of him trying? I mean, again, we're talking the younger, the more creative you have to be with making it exciting. But why not have some melons with lunch, and he picks his food and the melon at the same time as a transition period.
And it's the same for us. Food also has to be fun for us. If we have to sit there eating, carrot sticks on their own the whole day long, then it just gets boring, and we don't enjoy it, and we don't feel satisfied as well.
Not just that, children pick up the energy of the mother. And if the mother brings in negative energy and frustration every time at the meal, then the meal experience becomes frustrating, and they pick it up without them even knowing. So they discover that they are bothered, or there's something off during a meal every time. And when you're not feeling right during a meal, when it's electrified kind of the environment during a meal time, even digestive juices don't produce very well. I mean, the digestive system shuts down when you're stressed. So you might not digest the meal as well if you're stressed. I mean, talk about adding more stress to the mother, saying don't even get stressed, but just relax. If he wants to bring in the fruits, bring them in, but try to mix them. And then if he's full, he gets up. And then use that as a transition period as he learns or as he grows.
And also the thing is, a child, like any animal, will not let themselves starve. So, I always tell my clients not to worry. If your child just refuses to eat that meal, when they're hungry, then they'll eat again. That's just the way it goes.
Definitely. Yeah. I think this is our weakness as mothers, or as parents in general, because he didn't have lunch, or so I say, okay, what's going to happen? So he'll skip dinner as well. Okay, so what's going to happen? So he'll sleep hungry. So what's the big deal? So he'll starve. So you realize that's the ultimate fear that you have, and then once you realize it's not going to happen, they won't let themselves starve. The trick is to catch them after they've starved themselves, to catch them and give them a healthy meal, rather than give them a pack of chips, because you've given in because you think they're never going to eat it ever again in their life, and it's not going to happen.
And also, it's not a punishment. This is for their own good. We want to feed them the healthiest, the best foods. And if we realize that we perhaps, introduced bad habits, then it's also up to us to then introduce the good habits again for everyone's benefit. And this actually leads me on to another question that came in, which is, well, the mother is on board, and you mentioned this earlier on, but what if when the husband goes and does the shopping, if he's not totally, he thinks this organic food is a hype, or something like that? It's how to basically to get the whole family on board, because again, it's for everybody's benefit. When a mother starts realizing, gosh, there's a lot that we can do with food and really be healthier and live a much fuller life, then of course she wants the whole family on board. And this can also take time.
Well, the truth is that it's a lot easier to convert a child than it is to convert a husband. Okay, but just don't tell it. So, because old habits die hard. And it's a lot easier to convert a young person than it is to convert an older person who's already had many years of bad habits. So, maybe the pressure of converting the husband might just add stress to the whole situation, add more stress. So I would say, let the husband maybe see for himself the results on you and the child, and then he will start maybe understanding it a bit more or seeing the result. Because you pressuring him or you saying, you never do this, you never do that, will only add stress to the marriage. Having a child already does that, so you don't want to add any more stress factors to the whole situation. So my recommendation is just to leave it, to say, if you are going shopping, these are the things I want you to buy for me. If you really want to eat the chocolates and the chips and the crisps and whatever you want to buy, then buy enough just for you. I'm trying with I don't know, you can even say, I watched this interview and I learned some new things, and I really want to try to feed my child healthier. I would love for you to help me, but if you are not there yet, then I would respect where you are at the moment, and this is where I would like to be. I feel I need it for my whatever, for my sanity, for my health, to be there longer for your child, to be able to play, to have more energy. So you could use whatever argument, but you have to respect that it is his journey or her journey, whoever the spouse that's doing that is, and that they will be where they need to be at that moment in time, and we have to respect that. And I know it's very difficult, because you go through that a lot with your own family members and maybe extended family as well. You love them so much that you really want them to get healthy, and you have all the information, and if only they would implement, and they don't, and then the only thing it does is that it gets you more frustrated and more stressed. So it's their journey. Your responsibility now is yourself and the child, because he's under your control at the moment. And then even the child, if he grows up and decides not to implement, then there's nothing you can do. The worst thing you can do is stress about it. But what you can do is you can build as many good habits as you can at the moment, and get as much support from the people around you as you can, and hope for the best. So I think in most cases that I've seen, spouses have come along eventually. They've joined in eventually. They felt threatened maybe in the beginning. They felt uncomfortable. It's out of their comfort zone. There's too much change. Maybe she won't be as much fun anymore because now she's gone healthy. She won't come out with people react differently to different situations, and most of the time it's a reaction that comes out of fear, a fear of change.
Yeah, that's true.
So say take that into account, and maybe slow down a few years.
And what I also say to my clients is have an 80-20 life happens strategy, is that it's what you do most of the time that counts, not what you do some of the time. So actually, when you go out, or for example, if the child is at the grandparents and they feed them foods, even though you've said it, a million times and it still happens, if at home you're feeding them what you think is best for them, then you can also just let it go.
Yes. A lot of mothers tell me that they're annoyed because they want to be the good guy sometimes who gives the jelly beans, rather than always being the grandmother, and say, and she actually says it. She says, I'm the one who's always restricting. I'm the one who always has to say no. And then the grandmother comes in with a bag full of stuff that the child, and he falls in love with her. But the truth is, you have been given a responsibility of this child, and it's not always a walk in the park. And if you don't do it, nobody else can. So it's just like teaching them manners. I mean, you wouldn't let your child go out and use certain words or certain behaviors, and it's the same thing with food. If you're going to teach them life habits and life skills, then this is one of them. And if it has to make you the bad guy for a short time, then yes. You know how when you go through a stressful period, or when you're depressed, or even when you're pregnant, sometimes you end up craving things that you had as a child. I don't know if you had that.
I only craved seaweed for 1 week. That was my only craving.
Wow, that's a great craving.
Yes.
But I wish I had that craving, because with my first pregnancy, I discovered that I was craving comfort food, and my comfort food tended to be stuff that I had from childhood. So I ended up craving like cereals that I had as a child, or even remembering the situation where I would be sitting with my parents. The comfort, basically. You remember a situation of comfort and you crave the food that reminds you of that. And I always say that wouldn't it be nice if you start feeding your children healthy food, and if they start having salads and chickpeas and lentils, for example, for dinner and lunch and stuff, and then once they're older and they go through a stressful situation, they crave that instead of craving the junk that we used to have as children, because it does register somewhere in the brain as comfort. I ate it at a time when I was comfortable and I felt secure. So this is what I keep telling myself. I know it doesn't make me very popular with the kids because they don't always have bags and bags of sweets. But if I can just do that in my lifetime, just make sure that the food they see regularly is healthy food, so that when they do crave comfort food or home-cooked food, this is what they remember.
Yeah, it's basically our notion of a treat as well. When we're younger, whenever you went to the dentist or you pass an exam or whatever it is, you're given a treat. But actually, because life has all these challenges, you have a treat much more often than actually we're supposed to have them.
Yes.
And to treat your body is actually to give it what's best for it. So the whole idea of a treat is really should be giving ourselves healthy foods. But the other idea of a treat should actually be much less often than it ends up being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or even a treat that is not food related,
Exactly,
I wish rewards even at school were not necessarily food related. And people always get shocked. I mean, I tell the teachers, even my kids' school, I sometimes speak to the teacher and I say, why not just give them a pencil or a crayon or a sticker or a pen or whatever age you can find a treat that is not food related. And that way you associate pampering yourself and giving yourself a treat with something that's not necessarily food related. It doesn't have to be chocolate cake. You could go out now and get yourself a massage, for example, or I don't know, a trip to the beach somewhere, or it doesn't have to be food. And once you tell that to people, they think, oh yeah, they just don't see it like that because we never did it like that when they were children. And you can start that with your kids now. You can have a bag full of stickers that you can use as treats. And teach them that treating yourself does not have to be with food.
Absolutely. And also going back to your point of, the mother being the bad one and the grandmother being the good guy or the good lady, is that also we're not just raising children, we're raising adults, people, human beings. So actually it's the lessons that we give now that are going to serve them for their entire lifetime, when mummy's not there to tell them, what to do anymore.
Yes.
And that's also really important to bear in mind, that these are lifelong skills and habits that we imprint. And as you said at the very beginning, it's much easier to do this now rather than them getting to their 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever age it is, and realizing, actually, now I want to make some serious change.
Yes. What's even more fascinating is that if you're raising the children, you are creating the habit that they will use to raise their own children. You kind of, once you have your own kids, you start remembering things that your mother did because you don't know anything else. You start, either you consciously say, oh, she did that, I want to avoid doing that. Or instinctively, you would start doing it and you would start even repeating things that your mother used to say. So you're not just raising your kids and making them adults and teaching them adult habits. You are setting the cornerstones for what they will teach their own kids. And that's a big responsibility, I know, and maybe a far-fetched idea, but this is what I tell mothers when they ask me about lunch boxes, for example. So I say, lunch boxes, it's a hassle. What do I do? What do I put in it? I'm so stressed and I don't know what he wants in school. It always comes back the same way I sent it. And I say, well, what do you want your child to have as a snack as an adult? Do you want them to be having a healthy snack, or do you want them to be having chips and chocolates and crisps and things like that? And she said, no, as an adult, of course, I'd rather he has, or even as a teenager, I'd rather he has the food. And I say, well, these are the images of a lunchbox that you're setting now. So every time your child opens his lunchbox in school, he's seeing what a lunchbox should look like. So even if it comes back untouched, let's just at least establish the visual of what a lunchbox should look like, so that in the future, as he's in grade 1 or grade 6 or even an adult going to work, he knows what a lunchbox should look like. Because by the age of 10, if you haven't set a proper looking lunchboxes by then, by the age of 10 you start losing control over what he will have, because then maybe there's canteen and it's a lot easier. So instead of filling it with crisps and chocolates and muffins and stuff, try to put something else. Put raisins, put a sandwich, put hummus with vegetable sticks, for example. Put olives, put sweet corn, put green peas, anything. The stuff that you would want a normal adult to have later on, or you would want your teenager to have. You have to start now. This is when you grow the seeds, kind of, and you'll see the fruits of that hassle later. A lot of mothers think that it will take ages for their child to now switch. If you have a child who's not used to that at this point, it's very easy to convert children. I have a harder time convincing the mother than I do convincing the child. Children have had a very short time of bad habits, if they have had bad habits. And it's much easier to undo that than to convince the mother sometimes to add healthy food. So it's very ironic like that.
It's funny, and it's true what you say, because I went to boarding school and we all had what was called a tuck box, which was a little box, this was in England, with your treats in it. And all my friends had, chocolate bars and crisps and all of this, and my box was always half the size of everybody else's, and all I had was green apples in there. And I was always so embarrassed, and the others would actually laugh at me. But then over time, I realize now that it's also, of course I eat, I love chocolate, but it's much more normal for me to eat a lot of fruit and vegetables than it perhaps was for other people.
Well, let me tell you an interesting story. I'm always, because I'm a nutritionist, I'm always conscious about my kids feeling that they are nerds, kind of, that they feel that they are outcast, or that they're not popular enough in school because they're the ones with the strange-looking lunchbox. And I think mothers do think about that. You don't want your child to be outcast. You don't want them to feel too different. And it does cross my mind sometimes, and I think, okay, are they going to have a complex out of that and then go crazy once they do have the freedom, or is it going to affect them? How's it going to affect them? And then one day, my daughter, it must have been 2 years ago now, so she must have been around 9 years old, and she had been taking a healthy lunchbox to school every day. Of course, we have the odd treat for birthdays and stuff once in a while at home, but the lunchbox looks healthy. And then one day she came home and she said, "Mama, my best friend, she always takes the raisins and the corn from my lunchbox. So tomorrow, can you just pack extra so that I can give her without losing mine?" And I thought, that's it. I've reached. I know the answer now, because just like they might have a bad influence on your child and make them feel outcast, good eating habits could also have a trickle effect, and they could also affect other kids. So I ended up sending extra raisins and stuff with her, so that that child who doesn't take a healthy lunchbox can have from what she's having. And because she was having it with confidence and she was happy having it, all of a sudden it becomes more interesting, and today raisins come in little boxes. They're funky. You can still have a healthy treat that looks nice. You can even put them in food, in toothpicks or something that's more exciting, or you can even pack chopsticks in the lunchbox so that they can eat their food with chopsticks and look really cool in front of the other kids. So I don't know if they'll feel that they were deprived of their childhood or their chocolates. I don't know. I still haven't.
I don't, so you're okay.
Because I had the opposite, but
I did go crazy eating chocolate though for a while. When I was old enough and I could, then I did. But I realize now that it wasn't, it's not always for the reasons that we think. That can happen, but it only, when you go crazy over something, it's normally only for a certain period of time. And then if it carries on, it's because there are other issues, like, you're using it as an emotional backup or whatever it is. So, but in terms of our teaching, I don't think that would lead to a lifetime of bad habits.
No, of course not. But also, once you have that chocolate binge, let's say you have had a chocolate binge, and then you feel horrible the next day and you get a headache and whatever, your body just doesn't like it, then at least you know why you have a headache. As opposed to people who are constantly doing that, who are constantly feeling ill and not knowing why. So you say, yes, I had a binge, I went crazy yesterday, that might be why I can't get out of bed today, and then you get over it, you start eating healthy again, and you start going back to your old habits, So,
and do you give some, in your book, so I guess you talk about the whole theory part of it in the background like we have been now, do you also give some recipe ideas in the book?
I do. The book has, in the back of the book, there's a whole section on recipe ideas on how you can make healthy snacks and healthy desserts and stuff like that. But even in the school section, for example, of the book, there's a whole menu suggestion for lunch boxes, what you can put as a main thing in the lunch box, as side dishes and lunch boxes. I even have a sample menu of what you can feed at home. And I have a section of how to make food more exciting and more fun for a fussy eater, step by step on how you can make it more exciting, because at the end of the day, you're not just a mother, you are a marketer for the food that you're making at home, especially for health. So you have to have some skills of how you can market it. And the main one of them, for example, would be to see what your child is into at the time. Let's say my son at the moment, for example, he's into football. And instead of saying eat healthy food, which is a very generic statement, because you will not get sick when you're older, you know, for a child that doesn't mean anything.
No.
You know, they live in the moment a lot more than we do. So you have to relate it to the moment, to the current excitement that he has in his life. So if I say eat lentils, for example, I would say, you know why I want you to eat lentils? Because they have this thing called protein, and the protein builds the muscles, and then you have muscles running across your thighs, and these are the muscles that will help you shoot the ball and score a goal, for example. And go in as much detail as you can, because they understand a lot more than we think they do, you know? And then when he does come home and say, I scored, or we won, or something, then relate it directly. I know it's very cheeky, but then make the immediate connection between this and that, you know? And explain to them, why should they be having, I don't know, healthy oils, for example, nuts and seeds, instead of having the potato chips. Explain that to them. There's two kinds of oils, and I explain that sometimes even just by drawing, you know, something for them, depending on the age. But girls are into hair, for example. My daughter growing up really wanted her hair to grow healthy and shiny, and, you know, they really care from a very early age. So I always connected the two and said, look at these oils, the omega oils, for example, they're the ones that go into the hair follicle, and that's what makes it shiny. And at least when she does have it, even if she's forced to have it, then she, even subconsciously, on some level, thinks that it's good for her.
Yeah, but and also this is what they're sharing at school.
Yes.
For example, you know, they go back and they say, oh, you know, I scored a goal, and and they notice what other people have in their lunchboxes, and these comments will come up just because, without even thinking, because they're used to hearing them. So I'm sure all the girls in the playground know the secret to shiny hair now.
Yes, yes.
From your
Not only
daughter.
that, they have one of her friends, my daughter, I keep talking about my kids, but one of her friends gets migraines at age 10. And that's a lot to have for a child, and she's been having them for a very long time.
Gosh.
And then one day she came home, my daughter came home and said, my so-and-so friend had to leave school today because she had a migraine again. And I said, oh, poor thing. But she said, you know, Mama, she always drinks those fizzy drinks at recess. So maybe that's why, because you know how you say the food colorings, it gives us a headache. And maybe that's why she keeps getting those headaches. But I keep telling her, but she won't listen to me.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, you made the connection. Well done for you, you know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't give her the migraine. I don't know. But she made the connection because of information that I've been drip feeding all along. So you're basically brainwashing your kids.
In the best possible way. If someone's got to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Funny. I'm just going to check if I've got any other questions that had come in specifically. Did you? You have 3 kids.
I do.
Right. And did it get easier for you as it went along? With this, or?
It did. No. It didn't. You know, I have a girl and 2 boys.
Yeah.
And when I had the girl, I thought, okay, these are the girl habits, sorted them out. Then I thought, oh my God, now I'm having a boy, I have to start all over again, and I did. And then when I had the 3rd, I thought, okay, I covered the boy and I covered the girl, I know their eating habits, I know their styles. And then you have a 3rd that has nothing to do with either the boy or the girl. And, you know, you just discovered they are individuals and they are each completely different. Their eating habits and preferences are completely different. till this day. I mean, I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and you just have to respect that individuality, and you respect taste buds. But I am always weird things I would do, maybe like asking them to check their own nails for zinc spots, for example. You know, when you have a white spot on a nail, that's a zinc deficiency. And I tell them, you tell me when you think you have a deficiency or when you're feeling low. I mean, for the older two, of course. And you discover that they come back to me sometimes and say, Mama, look, I have a zinc spot. What should I do? And I say, oh, let's increase pumpkin seeds. Let's have a bit more of this, a bit more of that. And that also is a skill. I can't say I mastered it yet or mastered teaching it yet to them. But you know, when you can start reading your own body signs, if you're constipated, for example, I always tell them, if you don't go to the toilet for a few days, let me know. That means your digestion is not moving as much as we want it to move. So I teach that to adults. That's why I'm teaching that to kids, because it's a skill. Knowing what's going on in your own body is a skill. Looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, oh, I look pale today, or, I mean, it doesn't mean self-criticizing, but picking up the signs before they become an illness. So if you get a headache, for example, instead of popping Panadol, because you're not really deficient in Panadol once you have a headache, right? So people keep popping Panadol, but maybe you are deficient in something. Are you drinking enough water? And this is what I ask them. They come back from school, for example, with a headache. They'll tell me, I have a headache. And I say, what do you think it is? What options could it be? What various things could it be? And it relieves some of the mothering that you have to do.
But it's also extremely empowering for them. You know, and as you said, it's not criticism. It's really learning to work with your body. You know, our body and mind is so disassociated from each other, but actually it's one and the same. So when you can check in, there's no judgment with it. It's just, oh, actually I feel this. This is what I need to do. So actually you're becoming more friends with your body and your mind, rather than seeing it from a, oh, my stomach's like this, I don't like it. You know, I feel I've got indigestion or whatever it is. It's more, oh, I've done this, what can I do to actually help myself to feel better? And that's really, it's nurturing, and it's, you know, it's more loving towards ourselves as well.
And I wish more adults do that, you know. I wish we would check in more often, like you said, and if they are older, let's say they are teenagers. I don't have teenagers yet, so I don't know, but from the teenagers that I consult with, I ask them to Google it, and I say, go and look at various options of why you might think, instead of saying my tummy hurts, I'll go on anyway, and I'll go to the birthday anyway, and I'll eat this anyway. Saying, wait a minute, just stop, and let's see what various things it could be. Did you eat anything yesterday? And then eventually they start learning how to analyze themselves, because you're not going to be with them for the rest of their lives, you know. Sometimes I've made that mistake as well. We try to micromanage their food so much, their health, that you are, they become so dependent on you that they don't know how to make the decision themselves once they're without you. And I've done that at some point, and then I've realized my mistake, and I thought, oh my God, and that's when I started teaching them the skills of, okay, you tell me what you think. Or let's say we go to a relative's lunch, for example, and there's a whole table of options. What do you think would suit you today that would give you life rather than take away from your life? And you allow, of course, can they have chocolate cake once a week? Can they have, you allow for that, like you said, the 80-20, right? But try to eventually, not if you're just starting now, then they need you. But eventually try to empower them as much as you can, so that they can make the decisions themselves without you being there, without needing you to make the decision.
And as you said also in the beginning, that it has to do with the whole energy and feeling around it. So becoming paranoid about it and too strict about it all, you know, will not encourage a healthy relationship with food for them in the long term.
Yes, yes, of course, yeah.
And with your book, would you say that starts from any age?
My book starts from the age of 2.
Okay.
So, so it's once they start eating and once they've gotten into the habit of eating regularly with the family. And the earlier you start, the better, of course.
Yeah.
But, A lot of the advice that we give in the book is actually advice that the parents can implement as well, and you can implement it to eat on teenagers as well, because it'll talk about things like gluten, for example, and why you should be avoiding it and what it does to the digestive system. And it's advice like that that applies to the whole family, really, you know, to the whole spectrum. And you can even show it to relatives who wouldn't who are not really sold on the idea. Maybe say, look, it's written here, there's a protein called gluten, it messes up digestion, and this is why I'm trying to avoid it. Can you help me, please? And it even has a section for teachers of how teachers can pick signs early in children and spot them.
Wow, okay.
Or maybe even things that they can do in the class to make healthy food more exciting and appealing for children, you know, because it's not just us that are involved in the children's lives. It's extended family, it's teachers, it's a school environment, it's anyone they get in contact with, really. So so we try to implement as much as you should try to implement as much as you can, and then not stress about the rest.
Yeah.
You know, you only be able to do as much as you can do at that point.
Fantastic. And where can we find your book?
My book is on Amazon. You can see it on my website. My website is also alialmoayed.com. And you can find more information about I've written 4 books. One of them is, the latest is a pregnancy book, actually, because I went in the other direction. I thought, if I'm helping children with this book, why not affect the children even before they are conceived or before they are children? So I started even earlier. So the books can be found on Amazon or on my website.
Yeah. And actually, that's something that I'm very passionate about myself, is really preparing beforehand, you know, even before pregnancy and during pregnancy, because this really establishes our children's health also. So I'm glad you also mentioned that book.
Yeah, we had a chat about pregnancy when you were pregnant yourself, if you remember, and it is very important to start very early, and the earlier you can start, the more, it's really the best gift you can give your child. Starting early before conception. But if you're not, and you didn't, and you've already had the child, it's never too late. Even an adult can start healing. People heal from stage 4 cancer, they heal from illnesses that are much harder to deal with. So if you have a child and you haven't started yet, then it's simple, really, but you just have to be convinced yourself as a parent that it works and that it's good for them, and then the implementation will come naturally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us.
Caroline, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, same here. Same here. So I hope your viewers can benefit from this, and my viewers, and I think any small difference we can make in children's health would be great.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Caroline.